Wow. So we're big time now. We got the man on 22, as JB would say, 22. Our fearless physical therapist with the Panthers that Christian and I get to work with every day. So Christian McCaffrey, how you doing today, man?
Oh, I'm good, man. I appreciate you having me on. Colin's been he's been wanting me on. Well, I've been wanting to get on for about a year and a half now. I finally got the okay to come on the podcast after you've been dodging me for about a year. So I appreciate you having me on.
I'm gonna let that lie and not comment, but we appreciate
Well,
you
I
coming
mean,
on.
guys change as they go on more and more years to the league. So I was just honored that I got asked.
Yeah, you know me. I'm a big time guy in this league, and I have the luxury to blow people off. Absolutely. All right. Well, I don't even know where to start because there's so many ways I can go. It's funny. I was going through like just doing some light background stuff. Obviously, I had the luxury to get to know you as a teammate. I've watched you as a fan. We were in college at the same time together, so I've seen you from far. Now I know you personally. So I'm going through and reviewing all these stats, and I'm like, I'm not going to talk about these stats. That's for anybody else. That's for someone else to talk about. That's ridiculous. First off, dude, your stats are insane. Like, do you ever go through them and be like, wow, that's a lot?
Uh, I've never been a stats guy. But yeah, I mean, I know my stats definitely. I think, every competitor at the end of the year definitely knows the statistics, but um, I've never been, I miss the days when you're a kid, and you're playing little league football and you can be up by 35 or down by 35, but no one really knew as long as everybody's out there playing ball. But yeah, I do know my stats, but there's a lot in there actually. I mean, like anybody, you look back on the years, and there's stuff that just irritates you because it could have been the difference, between the Heisman maybe. I don't know, but I'm not
Yeah.
not bitter about it at all. I don't really think about it. But yeah.
Now, do you set a goal every year when it comes to numbers?
Yeah, I set goals every year. I used to put more into the individual goals than I do now. But I definitely set individual goals. I try to do that with every period of the year. So, I'll set like now, since we get 3.5 weeks off from summer after mini camp, I'll set, a specific weight of where I want to be, how much I want to deadlift, bench, clean, all that, by the start of training camp. So I'm constantly setting individual goals, whether it's how many yards I want to have or touchdowns or whatever. Um, I think it's super important to set goals.
You said it, you changed it where before you were like adamant about this number or whatever that may be. Why has it changed throughout your career where you may not care as much?
Um, I think I've appreciated the team aspect of football, and a lot of times, you can reach a goal because it means opportunity. I didn't say I don't care about the individual goal anymore. I definitely still set numbered goals. But I don't focus on them as much as I used to, as opposed to, just focusing one snap at a time, one play at a time, and not really looking at, because I'm a thinker, and I'd be lying to you if I said I haven't caught myself in the middle of a game wondering how many yards I've rushed for in that game, just to try to get to my goal. I can get a little bit obsessive over it, which is a good thing. But, then you start to think, well, I need to break a big one. I need to, possibly bounce one instead of being patient and letting the hole open up, and just continuing to be consistent with my eyes, and hit every hole and make sure I'm checking my P's and Q's before I start to try to make something happen just for my own personal goals.
It seems like you're a dialed in, very soft self-talk, competitive guy, competing against yourself. People ask me about you frequently. I'm sure, all your team, all of us have been asked about the great players we play with, even you. What makes, Sam Darnold great, or what makes Christian great. And when I was in New York, it was Eli Manning, or, I was Mitch Trubisky in Chicago, Allen Robinson, whatever. So the first thing I say about C-Mac is he's the best walkthrough player I've ever seen. I've never seen anything like it. You're just so dialed in. Where did you pick up those habits from, and why do you value, or where does that attention to detail come from?
It's I think for me, there's always been, a fear of losing, as well as, I want to win, but the fear of failure scares me, knowing that, I know what I can be because of what I put on tape, and I know what can happen if I don't work as hard as I, possibly can, to be great as well. And I think when you go through adversity in this game of football, it can humble you. It can humble you very, very quickly. And that's something for me that's made me realize that I don't have time or the opportunity or the privilege to go through the motions in any aspect of the game. Um, and I was listening to George St. Pierre talk for I'm a big UFC guy. I love combat sports, and one thing he said that really fascinated me was, if you're not training to be the best in the world, then you should probably do something else. And that's coming from someone who's one of the best fighters in combat sports. And I just always try to relate, the stuff that inspires me to football. And I look at the way that people talk about Kobe Bryant practice and Michael Jordan practice, and all these guys who are so good at what they do, and Tom Brady, and Peyton Manning. And I think I'd really just be a fool, not to approach it the way those guys did, because so part of it's just learning from others, and part of it, to sum up a long answer, I'm rambling, but I think football's it's humbling, you know what I mean? And it's a humble confidence that forces you to act, accordingly when it comes to the details of being great at your sport.
Humble confidence is a real thing, because man, oh man, it will knock you out in a second. You played 48 straight games, man. That's unreal. And then you had some ups and downs with injuries last year. Before I get into that, you said learn from some greats, learn from some people when it comes to walkthroughs or competition or whatever it may be. Who are some of the people over your career? Obviously, your father, the people that were around him, people that he was around, surrounded himself with, and then you're in college, and then you're in pros. You've been with one organization. Who are some people that you've looked up through over the years and learned a lot from?
Yeah, I mean, really, man, when I think to guys that have, shown me the way, so to say, my dad is somebody who taught me really everything I know about the game. He's a guy that I just respect. There's certain guys that when you go through life, and I don't know what was going on. Sorry. There's certain guys, when you go through life, and they say a lot of great things, and everyone knows them, obviously, but then you just kind of turn on the tape and you love the way they play the game. And I think when I watched my dad play, he never said shit. He kind of just went about his business my whole life. Even he was never the loudest one in the room. Always very quiet. You could tell, he was intelligent, and he knew everything that was going on in the room, and he didn't say a lot, but I was always curious as to, what more he had to say, because he was just somebody who I respect the way they played football. I think really as a receiver too, he played wide receiver. I look at how he blocked and what he did in the run game. And I know obviously Terrell Davis is a great back. But watching, my dad and Rod Smith, and watching that offensive line block, 15, 16 yards down the field, was something for me that I appreciate, obviously, as a runner. But it just shows that what their mentality is. It's easy to have, I won't say easy, but I guess everybody sees the highlights and they hear about the big names in football and this and that. And one thing I've learned over the years is football is the biggest team sport in the world. And the guys that are the best team players are the best football players. And they're not always the guys that get all the attention. So my dad is someone, like I said, who I look up to a lot, coming into the league, I'd say just in college, playing with a guy named Kevin Hogan, who was our quarterback at Stanford, who's done a stint in the league, but a great leader. Once again, a quiet guy, didn't say much, but you just knew he was about it. And you can tell. And obviously, Colin, you've played with plenty of guys like that, who they don't really need to say a whole lot for them to make noise. And he was one of those guys. And then coming into the league, Luke Kuechly was somebody who is just a guy that you just want to emulate everything that he does. And I had a lot of teammates like that: Ryan Cleo, Greg Olson, Julius Peppers, Thomas Davis, Cam, all these guys, right, who you come into the league. But Luke Kuechly was Superman. You know what I mean? So I just tried to take a lot of knowledge from him and pick up on some of the different traits that made him so great.
What was Luke like? That's another one. People asked me last year, what's he like? I'm like, well, he was a scout, pretty intense guy. He lost some weight, right? I don't know. I just got here last year, so I don't know. I met Luke on a recruiting visit to Boston College. I met Luke in 2010, 2009. I went up there. Mike Saravo, our linebacker coach, he was a recruiting coordinator. Ryan Day was the recruiting coordinator for our area. He was at Ohio State now. And I was going to BC. I met this guy named Luke Kuechly. He just looked like a normal guy. And they're like, that's the best player on our team. I was like, oh, okay, whatever. Obviously, he is who he is now. But what's he like? He's super intense. Obviously, very smart, cerebral football player.
Yeah, Luke's he's such an interesting guy because he's one of those guys when you mention his name to other people, no one ever talks about the player he is because he's so, he's that good of a person. And he truly is. Like, sometimes I think he's like Dexter, where he's such a nice human being and he's such a great friend of mine, one of my best friends in the world today, and been on fishing trips and done a lot of stuff together. And I'm it's kind of sad, but I'm always looking for, there's got to be something that there's got to be something. Like, there's no way that he's this nice, but he truly is. And he's one of the best guys I've ever met, right? But I always, once again, you just turn on the tape. If you want to know who Luke Kuechly is as a football player, just turn on the tape. He's arguably, and if he played longer, it would have been undisputed, but arguably the best linebacker of all time. And a guy who is he's a savage, he's like Clark Kent, and then he steps on the field and he's Superman, but he's a humble person too. He understood what it took to be great. He watched more film than anyone. He practiced harder than he was the guy who set the standard of what it takes to be a perennial all-pro player every year. You want to talk about statistics. Unreal. I think he played 8 seasons, 8 Pro Bowls, 7 All-Pro. How's that? You know what I mean? Is that good? So he's a guy who just knew what it took to be great and did it day in and day out.
Yeah, he's another one of the stats. People tweet about it every once in a while. You'll see it like 10 years in a row. I think he was either Pro Bowl, All-Pro, Defensive Player of the Year, Rookie of the Year. Just insane. Fun to watch.
Yeah. I think in his last year of college, he had like 196 tackles or something. And it's like he averaged 17 tackles a game. And I love looking up that statistic on Google because it's a picture of him in like some Ben Franklin bifocals. And you're like, this guy had 196 tackles. But then you just turn on the tape and he's just out there mauling people. And that's really, what he does best.
Well, we'll get to a later, more fun stuff, and then we'll get back to some of the serious business. So you drove the pace car at the Coca-Cola 600. How'd you make out?
Yeah, man, I did well. They didn't really let me step on it. I wasn't able to. First off, I thought it was going to be a race car. I think it was like a Nissan Altima. So I was expecting.
No way.
I'm expecting like a V12 twin turbo. I'm about, you know what I mean? Like, this is NASCAR, Ricky Bobby, all that. So I'm going to go fast. And it was a Nissan Altima. I didn't have time to get to 100. I mean, they set the clock at 46 miles an hour when you're actually doing the pace car. So, yeah, and you're getting bumped by the guys behind you, which is, but it is exhilarating. So it's 3 laps at 46 miles an hour, and they keep you because that's actually what they do to pace you. And then on the 3rd lap, the guy told me, he's like, look in your rear view mirror on the third lap. And so I look in the mirror and there's these cars that are just, you can hear them. And I got to say, it was one of the more exhilarating feelings I've ever had in my life. So it was very cool. And they let me, get up a little bit to 100 miles an hour when I was practicing, but definitely, I wish they let me step on it a little bit more.
Yeah. That's interesting. There was some Tyson Fury I saw was there, Jay Leno. And then your boy who's in NASCAR, Austin Dillon, talk about your relationship with him. He's a pretty good driver.
Yeah. I've, just being in Charlotte, I never knew that NASCAR was big at all. I knew about Martin Truex because he actually lived in Colorado, or he raced for Denver Mattress. He was in Colorado for a little bit. Now he's one of my neighbors, or not neighbors, but lives down the street from me. So I've gotten to know him really well too. But I've gotten to know a bunch of drivers. Ryan Blaney, bunch of them, and Austin. For me, was just a guy who reached out as a friend and was like, hey, if you want to, I think the first time he texted me, he was like, hey, we're going fishing, this weekend, if you want to come, and bring whoever. And so, I was just a rookie coming in. I was like, sure, no problem. Him and just the Dillon family open their arms to me, and, a lot of other guys on the team. I know if you ask Timo and, Alex Arma, who used to play for us, and some of these guys about Austin, they just tell you the same thing. Just very welcoming, kind person who is very competitive. Anytime, hey, you want to go play pig? Sure. You want to go fish? Sure. And everything was a competition. So, but it's been great getting to know the NASCAR community and just being in Charlotte in general.
You meet some awesome people over the years through football, right? Obviously, you've earned it, and you've got to see some really interesting things. You say the most exhilarating thing you've ever done. You look in your rearview mirror, and all of a sudden there's like 30 NASCARs like up your ass, like ready to go. And you're just like, hopefully I don't screw this up. Like you start gripping the wheel a little bit more, your hands start to sweat. What are some of the fun things you've done? I mean, I'm sure you've gotten to do backstage at concerts. You've gotten to do, different trips to different things. Some of the things you can talk about. That would be a cool story throughout your travels. Is there a certain trip? Is there a certain event that you've been able to get to because of, just what you've worked and earned?
Oh man. Yeah. I've definitely gotten to do some cool things. Yeah, it's tough. Once again, I love combat sports. So I love, it's not like, sometimes you go to these events and it's supposed to be this big event, and to everybody else it's a big event, but really it's, sometimes it's just another outing for you. But for me, I like going a little deeper into certain people. And so Justin Gaethje, one of the coolest sporting events I've been to, I went to a UFC fight. It was Justin Gaethje, who's a fighter from Colorado. His pro debut in the UFC, and he was fighting Michael Johnson. And if anyone wants to go watch that fight, it was an unbelievable fight. And I was sitting right in the first row with a buddy of mine, and seeing that live, and it was my first UFC fight, and being up against the cage. So in 2 rounds, I think there was 196 significant strikes landed. So this was just a bloodbath. And watching that and watching the emotion that went behind that, and just kind of, knowing him, there was, a personal aspect of it too, where I knew him, I know where he trains, and we were there for the fight. And watching that was pretty special. I'll have to think about some other, I've been to some cool places.
We could circle back to towards the end, and we can.
Yeah, let me think about some other answers.
Yeah. All right. So you mentioned training, combat sports, one-on-one stuff. You're trained at an unbelievably high level, one of the most in shape, dedicated to their body guys I've ever played with. It's a part of your DNA. It's who you are. I think you mentioned last year, you have, to us work talking about your process, your grind. You always have people working on your body. I don't remember the exact numbers. I have it written down, of course, in my notebook somewhere, but just talk about the investment you put into your body. Talk about, the people you have involved in your circle, helping you achieve what you want to achieve, your team, and then talk about, your training schedules, different times of year, and different things you're trying to accomplish.
Yeah. So, it's another thing, I'm very lucky that I grew up in the household that I grew up in. My dad taught me a lot about taking care of my body, and, what it takes to not just train hard, but stay healthy as well. And I think the thing I've learned about that is, once again, you can put as much time, effort into something as possible and still fail. And that's the humbling part of football. And I've seen that happen. And I think the fun part though, is trying to figure out, I look at it, like an experiment and trying to figure out what's the best way to maximize my potential every year, you know? And so I basically, once again, you talk about combat sports, I treat my off season like a combat, like somebody preparing for a fight. And it's a little different because we play now 17 games in 18 weeks. So we're playing one time a week, but it's essentially preparing for a fight every week. So when we get done with the season, um, I take that month off, but it's really a regen month. You know, it's a contrast bath, get in the pool, you know, go on hikes, get outdoors, get away from everything. You know what I mean? Just let my body truly recover. I think that diet and hydration and sleep is the most important right after the season. You know, you don't get it, you get into what 18, hopefully more car crashes a week. And then, you know, you got to make sure that because of the impact and the contact that you've experienced over the last 18 weeks, you take care of that and address everything that needs to be addressed. So that's what I spend that first month doing. And then, you know, it's a buildup. And that's one thing I've realized too, is the competitor in me wants to be really fast and really strong now. You know what I mean? I want it now. I know I can be there. So, you know, I'll start training and I'll feel like I'm so weak or slow and my confidence will be lacking because I'm not where I was last year, mid-season last year. And so, but one thing I've had to grow in is the process and realizing that it does take time and it is a progression and buying into the progression. So once that month off ends, then I'll start like what I call my 8-week camp. So really it's a 10-week camp, but it's 4 weeks on. And in that 4 weeks, you're doing a lot of speed stuff, a lot of progression stuff where you're kind of building up into sprinting, right? You can't just go from 0 to 100. So it's a lot of build up stuff. And then I go a week off after that. So I'll get pretty fast and pretty strong in that first 4 weeks towards the end. And then I'll take a week off. And in that week, like I said, once again, it's all regen, you know, getting in the hyperbaric, sauna, all that stuff is pretty consistent. All the recovery stuff's pretty consistent. I'll have hands on me, you know, whether it's a chiro, soft tissue, or whatever it is, you know, 5-6 times a week, if not every day. And then, so that's 5 weeks. And then I go back and restart that whole period. So then it's another 4 weeks with a week off. And that's my 10-week camp before OTA starts. And so, you know, you hear about the off season in this long amount of time, but it's really not that long. You don't have as much time as you think to prepare yourself to play football. If you truly respect the process of what it takes to get there. And I think last year, the year I got hurt, one of the things I flawed in was not respecting the year I had before that. And when I say I had 403 touches in 16 games that last year and played, I think 98% of the snaps.
Wow.
And you know, after the season, I wanted to get back. I was pissed off about some things and I didn't like how the season ended. Obviously I had success, but I just wanted to get back into it. And I overdid it too early and too often. And I think it set me up for fatigue going into training camp. And I'm glad it happened. I'm really glad it happened. I think every athlete who goes through adversity, that's a major advantage. Because you truly learn from your failures. And who knows, you know, football is an unforgiving sport too. You just never know. But I just know, I know how I feel in the moment now. And I know how I felt last year and it's light years better. But that's basically my 10-week camp before OTAs. I'll go through OTAs, do everything with the team. And then after that, I take about 4 or 5 days off where I'll go out, you know, I'll go on vacation somewhere, get to the beach, just once again, regen for 5 days truly. And that means, you know, nothing, because now it's truly, I think not all the hay's put in the barn, but you got most of it in. And after those 5 days, then I go a 3.5, 4 week camp before camp. And once again, it's another progression. And there's certain weights and certain speeds that I want to hit about a week and a half out. And once I'm there, then it's just stay healthy, get healthy for the first day of training camp, and then we're rolling. So it sounds like a lot, but when you break down the dates and you look at a calendar and look at the schedule, you know, I mean, I'm going into year 5. I remember every second of my rookie year. It feels like I'm still year 2, and stuff goes by fast. And I think that's when you look at the calendar and once again, just respect the amount of time that it takes to get there. I think people will do everything they can not to lose it as fast.
No doubt. No doubt. I think that was the biggest struggle for me this offseason. That this was my first, right, since I've played college, like completely healthy. Played last year in the NFL for my first real team other than a practice squad or XFL or AAF or whatever I've been on for the last 5 years, 6 years. And then the adversity of like, all right, it's March and I feel really weak. Like I just took off a month, and that was such a struggle. More, I would say more February because I took January off. But I can't imagine now I popped out of it and you feel great. Like 2 months later, you feel strong, you feel fantastic. And I trusted my process. But it was a struggle. It really was. You talked about
Yeah, and
adversity.
I think not having OTAs last year, I thought it was going to be an advantage. I think it hurt me because I was so used to having some sort of spring ball where you can divide your personal training schedule up into team, you know what I mean? And you spend what really is 3 months doing football, and that's running back drills, running routes, it's competing one-on-one, 7-on-7, all that stuff, which I think is much needed. It's a way to break up your personal training with a different kind of training from a new strength coach who might do some stuff a little bit differently. I think that's important to put your body in different situations so you're not just doing the same stuff over and over again. And you get the team aspect. You know, it's the best part about football, and I don't care what anybody says, is the guys. You know, it's the team, it's your teammates, it's being in the locker room, it's going out there and feeling like you guys collectively accomplish something together that you've worked hard for. It's the best feeling in the world. And not having that for so long, and then going into training camp and having a training camp where, you know, we're not even together in the same locker room. You know, they're split up. You don't stay in dorms with the guys. You got to go home to your own place. It just, I think it was it threw me off so much. And I'm not using them as an excuse at all, but I think not having OTAs for me last year ended up hurting me because I felt like I was missing something. And in that I overdid it.
Yeah, it's unique. I think for me, I was, it's so you're so more tuned in just because you've had the years of it, and now you know exactly what you want and need. And I love this OTAs process where last year I loved it too, not being around, because I knew, okay, this is what my last shot. I need to get in the best shape of my life. I need to
Right.
be able to, like, it was such a different mindset for me than like catching balls from a quarterback or running drills. I'm like, I just need to be ready to go. Like, I just need to be in the best shape of my life. It was full throttle. It was completely empty the tank. And then I hit a wall in January that I've never hit before, which was very unique. That was the first time I took more than a week off. It was like an anxiety attack.
Yeah.
Really struggling, man.
Do you think it was an advantage for some guys though? I think some people it might have helped.
It was for me. I thought so because I looked at it selfishly. Again, I wasn't a part. I was on the team, but I wasn't a part of the team. I was an outsider coming on. So I said, okay, I'm going to out train all these guys. I know probably at least 50% of them aren't going to be training the way I'm training, and then the next 50%, I'll be a part of that group. So there's an advantage right there. So then, okay, if I get cut from Carolina, God forbid, I'll be in great shape and I'll go to another team or whatever. So it was an advantage. I don't know. I'm going to say it's advantage that I made the team, and I was here, but I loved it because I was able to train by myself. I was able to focus. I learned to love training by myself. But before, I hated it and wanted to be with the team. So now I love both, and it's all great. But yeah, it was a unique year.
Well, I think you hit it. I think for some guys it's nice in a way, you know, not having so many reps. You know, and this sounds stupid, but it's just the way it is. But you don't have as many opportunities to succeed, but you also don't have as many opportunities to mess up. You know what I mean? All you can do is try to continue to perfect and work on your craft so that when camp comes with the reps that you are going to get, the coaches have less to evaluate on. You know, they're trying to sign guys that they've never seen before. They're not going to do that. They're going to keep the guys that, you know, unless you truly screw it up in camp. But you go a whole off season and something happens or you get hurt or whatever. you're putting less out there, but by that, you might be able to take advantage of it. And if you maximize the minimum reps that you have, you're on the team.
No doubt. It was unique with the preseason too. I remember two things. I want to write this down because I'll forget it. But I remember in Chicago, we played 5 preseason games because we played the Hall of Fame game. I was the 6th tight end, so I was with the 3s. So we played everything. And Coach Nagy's first year, he was like, nope, none of these starters are playing in any game. I think Mitch played 1 series. I think Allen Robinson played 1 series, all 5 preseason games. So we would practice hard as shit and then have 1 day off and then go play. It was like a bloodbath for like four straight weeks. I was exhausted for every game. I would be out on kickoff return. I ran out on kickoff. Christian, I wasn't even on the kickoff depth last year. I ran out on kickoff almost every single time in that whole preseason.
What were you on kickoff? What were you? The 7, the 6? What were you?
I was right down. That was a 3 running down the numbers. I mean, I literally would just go down and just put my head right between somebody's numbers. Like it didn't change anything at the point of attack, like what I would do now. It's not like I'm not avoiding and making the play. But and they would try to make me feel better that like, hey, we're playing in levels.
They didn't put you at the 5. They didn't let you just go nuts.
No, I don't have that ability, as you know. So I know who I am. I was like, perfect. We're going to come down in levels. I was like 4 or 5 yards behind every guy. They would cut in, then the guy would bounce it, and I would just fall in the pile and get half a tackle. So
yeah, do your job. As long as you're in the scrum, you're good.
Exactly. In the scrum, pushing someone a little later.
Yep.
So it was unique. Like this offseason, I felt fresh for the season. I did.
Yeah.
I felt very fresh to start the year. That again, this is me who have played in the XFL. I was playing in the XFL 5 months before we started. So it was definitely unique. All right. Question for me. This is like a personal one that I've been meaning to ask you, and we'll ask it on air. Now, like for me in training in the off season, I was on such a regimen with my meals. This is the one thing I loved about being home. It was like, I know my meals. I know when I'm going to get up. Everything's lined up. Like I'm getting up early. My lift is here. My running's here. This is there. I get my 20-minute nap here. I get whatever. Like everything is dialed in. My meals are dialed in. I'm like cutting weight. My biggest struggle is in a facility. Some practices you may get 3 reps, 4 reps in OTAs, right? And then you may get like a 40-minute lift and maybe you do some metabolics after practice, which I try to do some running after practice. So like before I was lifting 2 hours a day. I was running, doing field work an hour a day, and then I would either bike and or swim. I would work something in I was swimming like 2 to 3 days a week, spiking 3 days a week, running 3 days. Like I was doing a ton, burning a ton, leaning out. And then you get in OTAs and you're like, wow, you got to change your diet. I've tried to really change my diet. Is that something that you struggle with because you're training at such a high level? And not that we don't train at a high level, but again, for those that don't know, listening, per our union, we're only allowed to work for 4 hours at a day. 6 hours at a day. Plus we have meetings, we have practice. It's hard to get like 2-hour lifts and you physically can't do it. So is that something that you've struggled with in the past or is something that you just accustomed to?
So it's a great question because I think it's different for everyone. And I think anytime anyone asks me a question about training or what should I do for training, I can never give an answer because everyone's different, right? There's body types are different. Their positions require different needs. And so I really can speak for myself. Some guys haven't had the mileage that I've had. Some guys have had more. Some guys, they need to be maybe a little bit more metabolically in shape. Some guys need to be, really strong. One thing that I've learned is, and I think this is true for any athlete, volume is the killer of great athletes. I think you can take a very good athlete, somebody who's naturally just gifted. Like one thing I've had to do in the past is respect my God-given talent a little bit. I've been very blessed with a great gene pool, and I've never had trouble running. You know what I mean? Like running is what I do. It's in my blood. Playing football's in my blood. And I appreciate that. And so one of my things, as I mentioned before, is overdoing it and overtraining. And so that's why everything has to be mapped out correctly because I don't need to be running gassers, anymore. To be honest, I go through a game. The best year I ever had, the year I went 1,000, like I said, I was playing 98% of the snaps. You know how many times I did conditioning in the offseason? 0. I never did conditioning because I bought into, I need to have the best nervous system in the game. And what I mean by that is I need to be a neuron. I need to be a jet. You know, I need to be fast and efficient. And I think when I play football, right, when anyone plays football, you play at full speed. And so I talked with a lot of guys on my team, and we tried to boil down what the best way for me to train is. And I realized that if I'm not running 100%, I'm not going to do anything. And so naturally, you can't run 100% doing gassers, right? You start to fatigue. And so, I mean, I don't want to dive too much into the science of it, but to your question, I've learned to just buy into OTAs. Whatever they tell me to do in OTAs, I'm going to do it because it's a break from my regular training. I'll get my conditioning in this 3 months of OTAs where, you know, I might get 11 reps on the day, but those 11 reps, I'm going to run full speed. I'm going to finish minimum 40 yards down the field. I'm going to treat it like a football game. I treat every single rep like a game rep. And then I go back into my training where in a way we do less, right? I go Monday, Wednesday, Friday. I train like a track athlete. My Tuesday, Thursdays are recovery days, like / you know, auxiliary lifts. It's where I'll do the pool, the gymnastics, you know, some of this stuff that's, you know, people might call a little bit funky, but there's reasons and purpose behind all of it. You know, so maximizing my nervous system, I've found in my past has put me in the best shape possible, because now when I'm running with, you know, hopefully, you know, obviously sometimes things differ, but I run with perfect mechanics and fast all the time, because that's what I do in football. And I think it fascinates me every year, right? I find guys who all day, they're like, I'm in the best shape ever. I did conditioning 3 times a week. I ran, you know, 440. And there's an aspect of stamina that you need in football. Don't get me wrong. I'm not saying, you know, run like a track. So an Olympic track runner, they'd run full speed maybe twice a week, maybe, right? So they're hitting full speed twice a week. Why? Because they're jets. They're meant to do that. Their whole job is just, hey, stay healthy, keep your nervous system firing so that when race time comes, you're good to go. But it fascinates me, going back to my point, you get guys who for 6 days straight, they're conditioning, they're doing this, they're doing that. And then they show up day one, and what are they doing? They're gassed. You know what I mean? They're gassed because they're training they're now playing football at a different speed that they trained at. You know what I mean? So if you're doing conditioning at 65% 3 days a week, and then you go to run full speed, you're not in full speed shape. You're in 65% speed shape. And football's played at 100%. And so I've always found that fascinating, that even me, you know, when I was in college and when I was at these, you know, when I thought I had all the answers, I was running forever. There's nobody that was going to beat me in a conditioning test. I was going to run every rep, you know, as fast as I could. And then I'd show up day one of camp and I'd be completely exhausted. And that always fascinated me. Why? I'm like, we do all this training and no one's in shape for football. Why is that? And, you know, and
you're running 110s and
you're running 110s. I'm like, dude, I need to be an absolute jet at accelerating with the ball in my hand. From 0 to 10, I need to be a jet. After that, I let my God-given, you know, and I get to top end speed. Don't get me wrong. I'll run full speed 60s and 80s. You know, because how many times do I break? Hopefully this year, you know, we do it a bunch.
A lot.
Hopefully a lot, right?
Hopefully I'm on the field.
But realistically, I don't get to those top end speeds unless I'm an elite accelerator. So my job is to be as fast as humanly possible from 0 to 100, not 0 to 60 in less than, you know, whatever it is, less than 9 seconds for a tempo run. You know what I mean? That anybody can do that, but not everybody can. You know, I watch some of these guys around the league, and once again, I'm not anti-conditioning. I think it depends on who you are. But I remember Julius Peppers, and I hate. Don't you hate when guys do this? They're like, well, this guy does this. I'm like, well, yeah, well, Julius Peppers is a freak, right? A guy could do whatever. He was 6'8", 300 pounds, and runs a 4.4, 4.5, whatever it is. So yeah, but I am doing it. But I
Yeah.
remember in the off season, I asked him what he did in the off season after my rookie year. And he's like, the off season is for recovering the muscles. I don't think he did anything. He'd show up to camp day one, 6'8", 300 pounds, and he'd have over 10 sacks a year. And so
I can't do that. You said everyone's made up differently. I cannot. I would be
no, I can't either. I'll be the first to admit that. But my point in that is there's guys that condition all the time and they're good. There's guys that run just track speed and do some of the stuff that I do and sprint mechanics all the time, and they're really good. There's guys that don't lift at all, and they're really good. There's guys that lift heavy as shit, and they're really good. And so there's two concepts of it, right? One is, as long as you stay healthy, you can kind of let your God-given talent take over. And two, just if you believe in what you're doing, I swear that's 75% of the battle. If you believe that what you're doing is correct and it's going to maximize your performance, most of the time it will. But I got to say, the more I go through the league, I do see guys over condition and over volume, what I'll say, and it ends up hurting them.
Yeah. It definitely comes from a place of fear, right? Not being ready, obviously
Right.
the opportunity and, obviously, you're not on the border of making the team or not, which doesn't matter because you're saying, hey, listen, train like a jet. You're going to be like a jet. I'm a prop plane, but I'm going to try to be the best prop plane I can be, the most efficient prop plane.
Yeah.
And
I
that's
think
worked for me. It has
100%.
Yeah.
And like like you said too, I mean, obviously I'm not, you say, I'm not in a position, well, you're in a position. I'm really not though. I mean, Joe, I'm also in a position where I could get traded at any moment. And I'm very realistic in how NFL football works, right? I mean, Joe Montana got traded. You look at some of the best players in the world, they've all been traded. And I don't want to be traded. You know what I mean? I won't lie to you. I want to be in Carolina forever. So to your point, there's the feeling of I may not be here. That's consistent with anyone. I don't care who you are.
I love it.
And I saw this last year. I went from thousand, everybody loved me. I had, whatever. I had a great year. But our team wasn't very good. I've never missed a game in my life up until this last year. And now it's all over the place. He might get traded, this and that. And so it really is, you think you have it figured out until something like that happens. And then you realize that once again, you go back to humility. It's a humbling sport. And I'm glad, I went through all that stuff, but to your point about training, I never have it all figured out. I say this now, and then I might come back to you in a year and be like, dude, I found this new conditioning workout that's unbelievable. I feel so good. You know what I mean? And I think that's the whole key is I don't think anyone ever just continues to do the same thing over and over again. At least not anyone who's trying to get better.
No.
Because you're always looking for the next best thing or the best formula to become you. And that changes with time. It changes with it changes with age, it changes with mileage on your body, it changes with contact. And that's the beauty of the sport, is how can I consistently maintain the process and the ability to become a machine every year, because it might require different things every year.
A jet. I'm going to try to be a jet this offseason. I promise, Christian. I'm going to do everything I can. As we finish up here. All right. I need an update. We need an update. We got two quick things and we'll let you go. Really appreciate you coming on, bro. The McCaffrey family, right? Unreal athletes. Everyone's an unreal athlete. Mom is a soccer star. Dad played 13 years in the league, 3 Super Bowls. Your brothers are all over, but we need an update because they're all over the place. No one's like, we got guys transferring. We got guys coaching. We got guys playing running back for the Carolina Panthers. Dad's coaching. What's the McCaffrey family up to?
So my mom's killing it. As always, she's doing great. My dad is coaching at Northern Colorado. Go Bears. My older brother's also coaching at Northern Colorado. He's the offensive coordinator, actually. Go Bears. And then my little brother, Dylan, is the quarterback at Northern Colorado. Go Bears. So anybody wants to check out UNC, Northern Colorado, I think they're going to have a great year. I've gotten just to go and shadow my dad this offseason when I was back in Colorado. And it fires me up, honestly. It just to see everybody in the same place. you know, kind of gets me really excited to watch college football. I love watching my brothers. I get more nervous watching them than I do for my own games. And then my little brother Luke is at Rice. My old offensive coordinator Mike Bloomgren is now the head coach at Rice, and so my little brother's going to play for him. So all over the place, but everyone's doing really well.
I love it. I love it. I'm gonna have to get a Northern Colorado hat. I've become a hat hoarder.
Yeah, man, blue and gold.
I'm gonna have to get the blue and gold on. All right, so I'm gonna let you go. One more thing. Talk about 22 and troops.
Yeah, man, appreciate you asking. So 22 and troops is something I started. You know, I always wanted to be in the philanthropy business as far as giving back, and sometimes it's difficult to choose. You know, what do you want to spend your time and effort? And for me, it was military, and I think it's always been military. It's just been a part of my family for a long time now, and I have friends in the military. I have mentors who have received Purple Hearts. Growing up in Colorado near the Air Force Base too, we're just very familiar with it, and just grew up in a household that always, you know, was taught to respect our service members, and so I started 22 in troops because I see that really, you know, 22 is an important number in that title, and it's not because of my number. It's actually meant because 22 veterans commit suicide every day, and I heard that number, and it was pretty astounding to me that, you know, and I'm somebody who, unfortunately, I've had friends who have committed suicide. I've had friends, siblings commit suicide, and it's been too relevant in my life to where I just felt like I needed to do something about it. And what better way than to start a foundation? And so for me, I'm excited about it. We have an unbelievable team. There's people on our board who are much smarter than I am, who are much more familiar in that area. I have a lot of amazing people who have served, who are helping us out. Like I said, people who have received Purple Hearts, you know, people who served in the military and are now CEOs of massive companies. And so talking with these people, I realized that there's a need in healthcare, and especially in the military. These, you know, I look at, we just talked for an hour about how I take care of my body, right? And the whole thing was, I sometimes feel a little bit undeserving of that when you have people who are risking their lives for, you know, for us, so that I can, you know, we can play a game, me and you, and they're not getting the same treatment I'm getting, and I don't think that's right. So it was something that I wanted to do. I was passionate about it, and that's our main goal, is to kind of take a 360 approach and a new approach in healthcare for the military. You know, whether that's emotional, physical, mental, however it may be, but we're working really hard. We have the right pieces in place, and we're going to try to raise as much money as possible to help as many vets as possible. So actually, we have a concert coming up that you know, I play piano, Colin. I'm playing piano in a concert July 2nd in Charlotte at the Fillmore. So Zach Bryan, who's another guy on our board, who's an unbelievable singer-songwriter. If you guys haven't heard him, check him out. But I'm playing in a few songs with him, and he's actually active duty military right now. And so, you know, the fact that we got him on board, and he's been unbelievable, and being able to work with him and his team is really an honor. And like I said, you know, I don't have all the answers. I'm not in the military, but my whole thing is just getting the right people and getting the best people possible around me that do have the answers, or that at least can lead us in the right direction. And so stuff like this, it's fun. You know, we got this concert. We'll have a bunch of events throughout the year, all trying to raise money for our vets. So, and try to just continue to take that 22 number and chunk it down to, you know, 21, 20, 19, 18. If we can just save lives, it'd be awesome. So
It's a wonderful cause, awesome foundation. We're going to do what we can do here at Not For Long Media to help and make sure we plug it. We plan to donate as well. And we really, Christian, we can't thank you enough for coming on. I've been lucky enough to get to know you as a friend, teammate, and really excited to hit the grass with you this year. So appreciate you coming on, brother. 22 in troops, check it out. And, you know, we're excited to help out as much as we can. It's fantastic stuff. Thanks, bro, for coming on.
You're the man, Colin. Appreciate it, brother.